This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I think for a lot of us, the 3.5 update has sort of changed the Helix for us in quite a big way, and I wanted to sort of describe my journey with the Helix a little bit and show you how I'm going to be building patches, I think, from now on, because for sure, got to turn that on.
Because for sure, I think there's some now bits of what were kind of received in conventional Helix wisdom that are basically now sort of defunct in a lot of ways. So the first thing that you probably come across, the first bit of advice that people generally tended to give was get some good IRs. And I don't know, I think at this stage, for me, that would be, I think, not the right piece of advice. So in the past, for sure, there were things that you could do with a good set of IRs that you couldn't do so much with the stock cabs. But my journey went like this. So to start off with, I would oftentimes use one specific own hammer IR. And as time has gone on, I've sort of moved away from using that to using a dual cab from like what is now the legacy cabs, because I felt like I could get some really good tones from that. But sort of a single stock cab, I didn't really get on with quite as well. So I felt like the dual cab kind of filled in some gaps and stuff. So I might have like a 57 on one side and a ribbon mic on the other, or, you know, any combination. So yeah, I started off with IRs and then went to sort of the stock cabs. And what was true for both of those, however, was that I would need to use essentially high cuts with higher gain tones. So part of my higher gain tone is that I like to have kind of a smooth top end. Like Eric Johnson sort of says, that sizzly stuff, especially if you're playing like a Strat bridge pickup, is not necessarily a big part of the sound that you want to enhance. It's probably one of those things that you want to sort of diminish so that you get more of the smooth kind of mid-heavy thing. So I used to use high cuts as far down as sort of 3.9 kilohertz. In the Helix, there are -6 dB per octave cut in the cabs. And take that down, so it didn't really matter so much, you know, what the character of some parts of the cab were, or the IR, but, you know, I was essentially just going, right, let's lop off a chunk of that top end so that it gets smoother. that's no longer the case, and essentially because IRs are like a fixed thing, right? You can't move them around so much. You have to choose between lots of them until you find one that you like. And the stock cabs were all shot directly over the cone, and for lots of styles of music that's not really appropriate, which is why myself and loads of others were using this high cut to sort of compensate for that. And that was sort of doing the job of essentially moving the mic around the cone. Now I can just use a single cab and get tones that I'm super happy with, and I'm not sure if I'm even gonna go always for the dual cab. I've experimented with the single cab, the new cabs, and what I can do if I want slightly darker tones is just move that position of the mic, and it's really, really impactful and effective. I don't have to worry about high cuts so much anymore. Let's jump in front of the unit. Let me know if that's been your experience too. I know for sure there's a bunch of you that are really enjoying these new cabs. Some people have commented saying they think they've just repackaged the old cabs. I can guarantee you that's not the facts. If you look in the notes, they talk about the old cabs being hybrid cabs. And there's a live stream with Ben Adrian on 5 Watt World where he gives away a little bit of a hint of how these things were created. I can assure you that the new IRs are much closer to what you would expect like professional IR creators to be making, whether that's Ownhammer, Redwires, ML Audio, all these guys. Much more traditional shot IR techniques, and also of course consistent because it's Line 6 doing them all in the same way. For me, I would definitely favour these now over the experience of selecting IRs, buying IRs and all that. I much prefer having the stuff in the box because it just saves me kind of scrolling through folders of IRs. If you are still an IR guy, let me know in the comments. And are you happy that you've now got a dual IR loading block? I think that's a really big step forward too. And also the DSP saving is obviously huge. So here's just a little bit of a peek behind the old John Cordy curtain, beef curtains. This was the Ownhammer 3IR that I used for a long time because it just had sort of a sound that I liked. But even with this IR that I liked, this high cut was doing so much of the work. So without that, you see, essentially, I'm compensating for moving that mic off axis and going like this. And what I found is, if you just pull up, what I'm going to need to do is switch this one for the 1024 sample. Now, I don't know if people are going to have any feelings about having slightly shorter IRs. I don't know if that's a thing that people care about hugely, but that is one thing that has sort of changed now. But if we go into the cab, load a single Cali V30, and we'll put that here. And what we're going to do is assign these both to this switch. And this is, again, I guess, how you could evaluate this stuff for yourself and decide whether you think it's worth ditching the IRs or not. So what I'm going to do is use the 67 condenser and maybe just start with the position around 4, take the distance down. There's no low cut and no high cut, if you see. So this is our IR. Could position this a little bit further away to get a bit darker. And I'm definitely noticing that the IR seems to be louder, so if I try and compensate for some of that difference, And we could even just replicate the same settings, so you might still want to keep these high cuts and stuff. And then I might bring that position a bit closer. So essentially you can use this position along with the high cuts if you still want to really dial in things in a way that just isn't quite as possible with the stock cabs. In a way, I think once you're confident with this stuff, I think moving away from the IRs might be something that some folks do. Here's a tone that I dialed in here. So this was using the Cali V30, and what I ended up settling on was position 7.2 and getting rid of the high cut altogether. Again, if I just swap back to that IR, I just feel like I can get much closer than I was able to before. You know, if you've got a sound in your head now, you can probably get way closer than you could before with the stock cabs, I think. And this, again, will be my process going forward if I'm trying to evaluate whether I want to go more down this route of having the stock cabs. I definitely feel like I can get tones that I prefer quite quickly now with the stock cabs, which was not the case with what are now the legacy cabs. So again, there I've ended up with 67 condenser, 3.9 away, and the high cut down at 4 kilohertz, and I'm already thinking, well, let's just get rid of that then. So that's kind of a bit of a clear win for me, I feel. Let's get rid of that assignment. Where are you? Bypass assignment, isn't it? So I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is that the same for you, or? The other really cool thing is that this is kind of freed up some stuff that just wasn't so possible before. So for instance, now I've got essentially like enough DSP to run even a Cosmos Echo in this preset, which was otherwise not possible. Another thing I could do would be to add in a completely different amp model if I wanted to. So like amp, I've got options that just weren't there before. So that DSP release is pretty legit, I think. So for instance, I could now have an amp switch in the middle of this preset, in a way that just wasn't really practical or possible on the HX Stomp before. I might still have some DSP free to do, yeah, like I can have 2 amps, I can have the cab in there. It's just, it's not that different from being a whole different kind of unit. Do you know what I mean? It's like substantial, the difference. In terms of workflow, then that's going to be how I'm doing things from now on. I think, in my mind, I think there's no debate anymore that I can get pretty much all the tones that I want, so I don't necessarily need to even worry about IRs at all. If I'm able to imagine a tone in here with the flexibility of the mic around the cone, this is going to be, for me, I think, a lot quicker than searching through IRs and that whole workflow. If you're already kind of wedded to some IRs, there's no reason that you can't just, use those still. I just think, for me, the chances are that I'm not going to need to use IRs from this point onwards, to be honest, because I can do whatever I like with these mics, the selection of mics and the position, and yeah, I think they sound great. So for me, that's how the Line 6 3.5 cab update changed the game for Helix for me. And let me know in the comments if it's done the same for you. I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers. I'm also not necessarily saying that they 100% sound better than IRs, but I do think they sound better in a lot of cases, particularly for this high gain is where I think you're going to really notice the difference. Being able to position your things around the cone really does make a huge impact when you're talking about higher gain tones. And I think that's one of the reasons that the stock presets, the factory presets now, I think are a step up from the older ones. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on that in the comments as well if you fancy typing something. Cheers for now.